and a graduate of OSCVI to sort of come back to the hometown. I know there's been some great thanks already, but again, I want to thank Teresa for the invitation to come, for all of my family who's here supporting me, and just for everyone in the room, just for supporting a really great cause. So I appreciate everyone being here. And just to give you a little bit of insight that I thought for a long time about what I could talk about today that might be helpful for all of you, or might be interesting. So I sort of broken this talk into two halves. So I'm going to spend the first half talking about my background and experiences, and the second half I did a fair bit of research as far as the best suggestions we can give to women to avoid pitfalls so that they can seek success. So hopefully by the time we're done, you can walk away with a few tidbits that maybe might be relevant to your own experiences. So just this past fall, when I was visiting my family, I saw this in the Wyerton Echo, and it's probably impossible to see at the back, but it says 20 years ago, Sue Robinson, which is my maiden name, I landed a helicopter on the front lawn in front of my grandparents' house. And you can probably understand this was, it was intentional. It wasn't an accident. But it was probably the highlight of my teenage life. I was a kid when I was about 14. I started, anytime an airplane would fly overhead, I'd point at it and say, I'm going to do that one day, and I'm going to do that one day. And by the time I was 15, my parents, in a move that now I look back on as shockingly supportive, they said to me, well, just go ahead and do it then. Why don't you just do it? And so they said, the Wyerton Airport has pilot training. You can sign up and you can start right away. So when I was 15, I started taking ground school and pilot training lessons. And on my 16th birthday, I soloed for the first time, just piloted by myself. And when I was 17, I had my private pilot licenses in both airplanes and helicopters signed off. So those are the limits. You have to meet those age limits. So that was a pretty exciting experience in my childhood. I now fondly call myself an aviation nerd, and I mean that in the nicest possible way, but it just meant that my whole world was about aviation. I just was so fascinated and so drawn into this industry that it was all I cared about, to the point where I did not do my grade 13. I had no aspirations of being an academic. I actually thought when I finished high school, forget school, I'm done forever. This isn't something that would be a part of my life moving forward. So after grade 12, I went to helicopter college, Canada College in North Bay, and I flew helicopters that looked like this. The Jet Ranger on the left, and on the right is the Sandstrom 280. We had lots of really neat experiences. So because it's in northern Ontario, we would take the doors of the helicopter off, and we'd take like a 50-foot rope and attach it to the belly of the helicopter, and then you sort of fly by literally leaning your head all the way out the window and looking down below you, and you would sort of pick up things like fuel drums and logs and move them around. It's really, really interesting, really challenging. In retrospect, it's actually a very dangerous type of flying, but it was just a fascinating experience. I also had the opportunity to earn my chainsaw operating certificate, which is very relevant to my career, because they wanted people to have the ability to cut trees down and build helipads in the bush. That actually stayed on my resume for years, just because it was such a different kind of thing. But what nobody told me was that all of the entry-level jobs for helicopter pilots are in the bush. And what that means is very northern Canada, very rural operations that women basically are not permitted into because they don't have facilities. They don't have 2 bathrooms. They don't have 2 sleeping quarters. So it's male only. So I finished helicopter college, came home, couldn't get a job, was sort of struggling with what the next step was. And when it became clear that it was going to be next to impossible for me to work in this field, I wanted to figure out how I could build upon what I had. So how could I take what I've already done and build upon it and go to the next step? And so I started looking at university degrees in aviation. So at that time, there weren't any in Canada. They didn't exist yet. But there were some in the States. So I ended up going to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. And you can maybe tell by the picture, it's probably hard to see at the back, but this is a picture of their fleet. So Embry-Riddle is a university that's actually attached to the Daytona Beach Airport. So you can go to math class and then walk over and get in a plane and go flying, and then land the plane and get out of the plane and then go to physics class. It's sort of all connected. It's a really unique environment. It's an entirely aviation university. And what's unique about that is on the entire campus, there's about 30 men to every woman in the whole school. So very, very few women. You can imagine a whole school with that demographic is different. And so my experience going to class is I was the only woman in almost all of my classes as I moved through the university. But I still, again, was just obsessed. I just love aviation, had this passion, this drive that I thought it was just fascinating. And so near the end of my experience, I had all the ratings I would need to be a professional pilot in airplanes. And I had the experience of getting an internship with an airline. So I moved to Houston, and for 6 months I would work in the airline. And when you're an intern, the real perk is you get jump seat privileges. And the jump seat in the cockpit, there's a captain and the first officer. Behind and between them is another seat that folds down. It's called the jump seat, and it's used for pilots to commute. So the pilots need to get somewhere. But when you're an intern, you get to sit there all the time. And so for the first time in my life, a kid who all I ever thought about was just how much I loved aviation, I had the experience to actually live that lifestyle. And I had not the experience I was expecting. There's something, it's quite crude, but there's an acronym in aviation, they call it AIDS, which is Aviation-Induced Divorce Syndrome, because I learned very quickly that the divorce rate among pilots is 4 to 5 times higher than in the general population. So basically, they've been divorced multiple times on average. And beyond that, I had several experiences of inappropriate actions towards me that made me feel really uncomfortable. And then the third piece to that was that I, for the first time, really understood what the lifestyle's like. So pilots typically spend 2 weeks at home in a month and 2 weeks away. And that disconnection of sort of not having a sense of place in my life really disrupted my whole being. Like I didn't see how I could be happy for the rest of my life doing that. And so in probably looking back, one of the most shocking parts of my path, I remember calling my parents and again saying, I don't think I want to be an airplane pilot anymore. And you can imagine them saying, what? What does that mean? What do you mean that's all you've ever wanted to do? But again, they were supportive, as they always have been, and they said to me, well, what next? How can you take that next step? How can you build upon it? So I ended up going back to Embry-Riddle, and I earned my master's degree in human factors. Human factors is a science that looks at how our minds and our bodies work and uses that understanding to predict how we make mistakes. That's really important in aviation because in modern aviation, about 80% of all accidents are caused by pilot error. So human factors is a science that tries to understand why this happens so that we can prevent it and make the industry safer. So after I finished that degree, I came back home and spent a few months living with my family and trying to find a job, not very successfully. And I was kind of struggling with what to do with my life. I ended up moving to Waterloo, and that's when I met my husband at the time. And then I really started to have this feeling like I want to get a job. I want to start earning money. And if we're getting married, I want to feel like I'm like a real grown-up and can really do this. And so I couldn't find a place, and I ended up applying to Teachers College to teach young children. And I was about 2 months away from starting Teachers College. And I sent a cold resume into the University of Western Ontario because they had just started an aviation program. And I thought, maybe my background might fit. So they called me in for a discussion. Very quickly after that, an interview, and then I started working as a professor. I was 24 at the time, so it was challenging because many of my students were the same age. Some were older than me, and my first day I remember walking in, and they said, oh, welcome as a new student in the program. I said, oh, I'm not actually a professor. I tell my students now because I ended up spending 12 years at Western in their aviation program, and then just this past year I moved to the University of Waterloo, and I'm part of their aviation program. But I tell my students now, I say, because they're so afraid of speaking. They're so afraid, and it's the women more than the men. I've had one woman say, just give me a 0 on the assignment, I don't want to speak. I refuse to stand in front of everyone. And I share this story of my experience, and when I first started teaching at Western, I would get sick to my stomach every single time I taught. And I was terrified because I thought, what if everyone discovers that I'm really not smart enough to do this job? What if everyone discovers, what if they can see through this facade and they actually learn that I'm not as good as they think that I might be? And I remember that feeling. It's a terrifying feeling, but you just keep showing up, and you just keep showing up, and then eventually you feel like, you know what, no, I do belong here, and I am the right person for this job. There was one time early in my teaching career, I remember taking a break because my lectures are 3 hours, so I take a break in the middle, and I went to the restroom, and I was using the hand dryer to dry my sweat stains because I had sweat through my shirt. I was so nervous, and while I'm doing this, one of my students walks into the stall and makes eye contact with me like this, and we both look at each other, and she just laughed. She didn't wash her hands. I think, awesome, okay. There's a lot of challenges. The life of an academic is not maybe well known to everybody, but 40% of my job is teaching, 40% is research, and 20% is service, so giving back and supporting different causes. So my research most recently has been books. That's something that I've sort of fallen into, but I actually really enjoy it. So these are my 3 books. And then this picture down here at the bottom, I sent as a text to my family recently because it's my new book. I printed it. I'm just working on my final chapter. So that for me is tremendously exciting because it's been about 1.5 years in the making, and it's about 300 pages. Nobody feels that excitement like I do. I wait for the people to be like, yes. For me, it's like life-changing. I think the key with this is there's no vampires or werewolves in any of my books, so they're not generally interesting to most people. But in my niche, they're quite good. But that's been a big part of. Whenever anybody says, "Oh, I read your book," I say, "Oh, you're the one. Thank you." So we look at aviation as a career. I'm sure all of you are aware that there aren't a lot of women pilots. I'll show the next slide in a second, but there's about 6% of airline pilots are women. And if you look at why, it's a strange discussion because there's nothing specific about the job of a pilot that makes a man more capable of doing it than a woman. Yet, even today, if you were to go to any bookstore and you look up a children's book for pilots, I guarantee you those pilots are men, not women. And so it's this cultural aspect that, piloting is a male profession. And I'll share with you that through the 1950s and 1960s, women were allowed to get licenses, but medical certificates, which pilots have to maintain, for women were only valid 3 weeks out of the 4 weeks in a month. Wow. So you can, so I guarantee that rule wasn't made by a woman because that's not how it works. But certainly, percentage of women in aviation is something that's been a challenge to try to bolster it up. And right now, aviation is growing faster than it ever has before, to the point where we're facing a pilot shortage on an international scale. And we keep saying, if only we could get more women to choose to become pilots, then we wouldn't have a problem. But it's a real challenge. So there's actually a lot of really incredible support for women in aviation. So this group here at the bottom is an international conference. They just had a conference in Orlando. But it's really neat. Like it's a lot of support, a lot of really strong community to support people who are women in this field. But I wanted to say as well that, so 6% of pilots are women, but among professors, only about 22% of professors are women. So an academic is also a traditionally male-dominated field. And so in reflecting on this and sort of in preparing for this talk, I started asking myself, what does it mean? Like, when would being a woman actually change my experience that I've gone through in my career versus being a man? And what I came to is the idea that, for the most part, when I was young, it didn't really matter. If anything, it was an advantage in a lot of cases because if there's 30 people in a room and there's one girl, well, if you're that girl, they're probably going to remember you. If you're good and competent and strong, it's a lot easier to be memorable to the people who are hiring you. But I think when it does get to be challenging is during the course of having children and pregnancy and trying to manage that process while also pursuing your career. I can share with you that I have 3 kids. They're right here. That one's not looking. But in the course of getting my 3 kids, we actually had 7 pregnancies. I had 3 early term miscarriages and 1 late term loss of a pregnancy. And that one was particularly impactful with my professional career because I looked fully pregnant. And I had told my boss and told my students and everyone, and I had gone in for an ultrasound, and because it was our 3rd, my husband wasn't there, so I was on my own. And the ultrasound technician, he was doing the ultrasound, and then she runs out of the room. And I was sitting there quietly like, what is happening? And I didn't know, but she had gone to call the doctor and ask permission to come back and tell me that the baby had no heartbeat. And so she came back and shared that with me. And my reaction is probably what you would expect, is just a series of, very loud crying and walking out through the waiting room filled with pregnant women. And I remember going to my car and just sitting in my car and just crying. And a man, bless his heart, he came and tapped me and he said, "Are you okay?" Yes, I'm fine. That's what he do. And so subsequent to that, they admitted me to the hospital, and they induced labor and so delivered the baby stillborn. And then, having my children and my family there support me was what got me through that process. But then 2 days after that, I had to go back to Western and stand in front of a class of 50 students and say, I was pregnant. I'm not anymore. This is why. And now let's talk about human factors for 3 hours. And that piece is, it's heart-wrenching. But what's interesting is the students who were in that class are ones I'm still connected to. So now they've gone on and they have their own families and their own careers. But because they were exposed to me at a time where I was showing humanity and vulnerability, it bonded me with them as human beings. And so I think that's a bit of a takeaway lesson, sort of the idea that as women, sometimes we're afraid to show when we're suffering, maybe. And in some situations, I think it can actually help us to tap into resources of other people to get that support. And so I'd like to say that this is me. Like, I can perfectly balance my life and my kids and my husband and my job and my cooking and cleaning and exercise, and I do everything perfectly all the time. But no, not even close. It's not like this. I was this state of constant managed chaos. And the idea that, one quick story, when Andy, when he was about 18 months old, I remember one time I was had to go teach, and I had to get him dressed. And he wanted to wear a Spider-Man shirt, so I run upstairs. I'm like, I got a Batman shirt and a Superman shirt, no Spider-Man shirt. So I come down, I'm like, I got Batman and I got Superman. And then there was this process of him trying to rip his clothes off, me trying to put his clothes on him, and then him like running around the house, like ripping it off. And eventually got him dressed and got him there, and I got to work. I remember sitting at work and looking around and being like, I wonder if anyone else here has been screamed at for an hour this morning. Is that just me? Is anyone else almost like that post-traumatic, you're so tense. And so, family life can be challenging, and I think in a lot of ways it does weigh on women more than it does men. I've had another time where I was in a faculty meeting with 40 men, and I was nursing at the time. My husband was taking the second half of the parental leave, and I feel that tingling in my chest. And anybody who knows where I'm going. And my milk let down in the meeting and soaked the entire front of my shirt. And I excused myself to the bathroom, and we were sitting there in the bathroom like, what do you do? They don't know what's happening. I don't have a sweater. These are female problems, right? This is part of our human experience. But I can tell you that the balance of having a professional life and then being able to come home and turn that off and spend time with my family who doesn't care about my research that much. They don't care about what I do professionally. They just love me, and I love them, and having that balance is, for me, I think, one of the most important things. And I can tell you that, my perspective and my philosophy is I don't care, or it doesn't really matter how successful I am professionally. If I mess up raising my kids, I think I'd have a really hard time looking back on my life and saying it was a success, because I really feel that that's very important. So I have this little quote, and you may not be able to read it back, but it says, life will test you, but remember this, when you walk up a mountain, your legs get stronger. And I think that this is a real key thing, is that yes, we all face challenges, we all face struggles, but we grow from that, and we build upon that, and because of that, we're stronger. And then maybe some of those challenges that are very female kind of challenges, that it's a struggle, and some days you think, I'm not going to get through this day, my whole world is exploding. But the reality is you do get through it, and then the next day you learn from that, and you build upon it. And so I like this, because I think that when you're outside and you're looking at somebody who's successful or who you admire, you kind of see that it's a path on the left. They have this straight path to success. And the reality is it doesn't work like that at all. It's more like this. And hopefully, through me sharing of my experiences, you can kind of understand both on an academic, professional, but also on a personal level, that knows that the path to being what you define as successful is more of a series of failures than it is a series of successes. You just fail and you think, well, how can I build upon this? What can I do next? And how can I move on? You just have to get up one more time, then you fall down. So I was asked, does being female matter now? So that's sort of my background up to this point. But then I was asked in preparation for this presentation, what about today? What about where you are right now? Does it matter anymore or not? And so I had a quick story to share with you. So I was at a conference recently, and there was a woman at the conference, and she is probably the most established woman in my field entirely. And I went up to her and I said, oh, it's so inspiring to see a woman like you in a position of power. What advice would you give other women? What would you tell women who want to do the same thing? And she said, well, I can tell you this. In aviation, there's 2 types of women. You can either be a bee or a doormat, and no one's ever called me a doormat before. And I walked away like, what? I don't know. And I remember talking to other people, other male colleagues who were at her level, and I said, what do you think? Is that true? And a male colleague shared with me, he said, I've actually witnessed that woman in action being cruel. And not to superiors, but to subordinates when she didn't have to be cruel. And that really struck me. And of course, you'll know I censored this because there's kids in there. So you know where I'm going. But it really led me to think about this. if I want to be successful, do you have to sacrifice that gentleness, that femininity, that kindness to be successful? And I like this quote. It says, success is liking yourself, liking what you do, but also liking how you do it. And I really feel that that's true, that who cares if you're the most successful person in the room if you go home at night and you're just wrought with guilt because you've been sort of a terrible person to people. I don't really think that's success. And so this is where I sort of dig into the research. I'm not going to make it researchy, but if you can bear with me a little bit. So kind of look at this. So think about this. And I think you guys can all experience or think about this in your own lives of women, some who are doormats and some who are bees. And the reality is, on the doormat side, you probably really like them. Like, they're nice people to be around, but you don't really respect them, right? And then on the bee side, yes, you have a lot of respect. Like, these are powerful, powerful women, but I don't really like them. I wouldn't really choose to be around them. And then I'd ask you to think about it. Think about a person in your life who has had the biggest impact on you, somebody who you find to be inspirational. You wish you could mimic their path, that you think they've done it the right way. And what I would guess is that that person you both respect and like, right? That there's a balance in the middle. And so what I was sort of doing in preparing for this talk was saying, well, I know some people tend to err on the doormat side, and some people tend to err on the bee side. So as we wrap up, I just wanted to share with you a few key tidbits so you know yourself, maybe which side you tend to be on. So a few ideas you can use to help find balance so that you can project an image professionally where you're both respected and liked. The first is don't put yourself down. Now this is something that seems so obvious, like who puts themselves down, but I'll share with you quickly. So I go to academic conferences all the time, and there's another woman who is amazing. Like, when she speaks, when you're listening, you're like, oh, she's so good. You know, like, it's so cool to see that. But because we're sort of colleagues, when she comes back to the table, all the time she'll sit down and she'll say, oh, I really messed that up, and oh, I feel so stupid. I can't believe I did that, and I wish I had said this, and I totally missed that. And as I'm sitting there, even though I watched her speak, and she's definitely amazing, as she's saying that, like second-guessing herself, in my head I'm going, oh, maybe she wasn't so good. You know, maybe she's right. She probably knows better than I do because it was her experience, right? I think women tend to do this a lot. And if you kind of flip it, I promise you I've never had a man do that. Like, I've never had a male colleague come up and speak and then come to the table and be like, oh, I really messed that up. Can you believe I did that? Like, it's almost comical. Like, it just doesn't, it doesn't happen. But I think as women, we do tend to say negative things about ourselves when we don't have to. And I'm very much guilty of this. And so I've sort of learned to sort of bite my tongue. Like, people don't need to know that I'm a better writer and I'm not that good at statistics. Like, they don't need to know that. I don't have to go out and tell everybody that all the time. But I tend to, because I want to be totally upfront. And I think it's a female thing. I want to be sort of completely transparent and upfront. But it doesn't work to our favor. It makes us more of a doormat. Does that make sense? It makes us less respected. Something else that happens with women is what I call imposter syndrome. And all of these are key terms. So if you go back home and you Google them, you can look into more details. But imposter syndrome is something that happens to women a lot. So it's the idea that I'm not really as good as I should be, and eventually, because I'm an imposter, I'm going to be found out, and I'm going to be discovered. And it's sort of like this, like, I know what's in the blue, and I think everybody else knows what I know and everything else too. You know, they know so much more beyond me. But the reality is it's kind of like this. You know, maybe we have our own skill set, and other people's skill sets may overlap with ours, but they don't entirely encompass ours. And in my experience, it took me years to overcome this. It took me years to feel comfortable and like I owned the space that I should be in. And I think it is a very female thing, and I think it requires a lot of support, both to reinforce this to other women, but for women to reinforce it to each other as well. And the other thing that I find all the time with my female students is when they make presentations, at the end of every sentence, they bring it up like a question. And I'm sure you guys have experienced this as well. My female students do this all the time, and I think they do it because they want to be accommodating. They want to see the nods in the audience, and they want to be respectful and not like, I'm telling you what it is, but more like, let's have a discussion about this. And so they make everything a question. But the reality is the audience makes it feel like they don't really know what they're talking about, and they're not really confident in what they're saying. This is something that's really hard to break as a habit. So I actually have my female students record themselves making a presentation and then listen to it and then be aware of every time you lilt up at the end. And you have to really, really practice to break it. But again, it's about being respected. So really quickly, I want to ask you to think about your body position. So everyone just kind of in your head, just kind of be aware where your hands are, where your feet are, what your body is doing. And then I'll ask you, so I'm going to put up some examples. So, so which of these would you consider to be ladylike, right? So I'm going to be asking, you kids can help me in the front. Show me your best ladylike pose. How do you sit like a lady? I'll say, okay, the girls are just like, okay, it's okay. So maybe you cross your arms, you cross your legs. Now I'm asking you guys, and the boys can help with this. Show me your best power pose. Show me a powerful pose. What does a powerful pose look like? Like this, right? Like Superman, like Wonder Woman. Yeah, so there's actually a whole lot of research that suggests that our body position is linked to our internal chemistry. So the idea that if you look at somebody who's afraid, and this happens in the animal kingdom, it happens with humans, when people get scared, they close up, right? Their shoulders come in, their feet get crossed, their arms cross in front of their stomach. They protect their internal organs. Sometimes you protect your neck. Like, if you look at it and you look at people nervous, you can see it on their body language. And the reality is, sitting like a lady is very much like that. You know, like you're trying to make yourself small. I know in the picture that was part of the poster that was distributed, when I had that picture taken, the photographer said, hey, can you hunch your shoulders? Because your shoulders are too wide. You're too broad. So being ladylike in a lot of ways is like, let's make ourselves small, right? But there's research to suggest that that actually impacts your hormones. So I strongly suggest when we leave, if you want, go and Google power pose. There's an amazing TED Talk about it from the researcher who looked into this. But it's the idea that holding a certain body pose can actually change your body hormones. So specifically testosterone and cortisol. So testosterone is linked to confidence. Cortisol is linked to stress. So if you stand in a pose like Wonder Woman pose, big, broad, powerful pose, your testosterone goes up, you become more confident. Your cortisol goes down, you become less stressed. So there's actually research to suggest that, like, if you have a really big event, a speech, an interview, a big meeting, that if you excuse yourself to the restroom, all you need to do is in 2 minutes, hold yourself into a big, powerful pose, like Wonder Woman kind of pose, and it actually directly affects your body chemistry. So it can be linked to increased confidence. Don't actually do it in the meeting, like don't like in the meeting, out of the space, something maybe in private beforehand. But anybody who's involved in yoga or anything, I don't know if you've experienced yoga and holding poses. That often, we just started yoga, my husband and I, but when you leave, I feel so good. Like I feel powerful but relaxed. It's the same kind of thing. But it can be used strategically to avoid some of that doormat syndrome. The other thing is learning how to strategically say no. What we find is that women, particularly in an office environment, tend to pick up the office housekeeping. So the women are the ones who do the cleanup, the women are the ones who take notes, or the women are the one who, I'll pick up coffee. And the women do that because they volunteer to do it. Like I will absolutely do all of these things for you because they're being courteous and trying to take care of others. But the reality is it does lead people to like you but not respect you as much. So when you're in those environments and you find you are that person who's always doing the kind of office housekeeping kind of tasks, set up a cycle. So set up, maybe we can take turns and say, absolutely, I would be happy to do this today, and maybe next time you can do it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but again, making it so it's more distributed. How do we be less of a bee? So people who are on the other side of the spectrum. So only controlled anger and giving back. So this, you probably can't see it at the back. So anger. So it says, a woman was arrested for defecating on her boss's desk after winning the lottery. Not a good expression of anger. So that's not what I would recommend. But there's a bit of an anger disconnect. So when you look at the research for when people express anger, how other people respond to them. What they say is that when a man expresses anger, other people perceive him as being powerful. And it's this gender thing, right? Like, oh, that's a powerful man who's expressing anger, like this picture here. But they say when a woman expresses anger, people perceive her as being out of control and not in control of her emotions and in many ways weaker. So it doesn't mean that women can never express anger. It means you need to do so strategically so you're not taken advantage of. So controlled and strategic anger, you should not be angry more than 5% of the time. So basically you want to, in your work environment, 95% of the time you're being sweet and wonderful, and that buys you credit. So in that 5% of the time you have to put your foot down and say no and reprimand somebody or straighten them out, then it's reasonable. It makes sense. The very strategic way we express anger is you say, yes, I'm angry because you fill it in, and you say which, and then you fill in what their action did negatively impacted a shared business goal. So it's not an attack on them as a person. It's not an attack that goes on forever. You don't gossip about it to other people or sort of wage a war against this person because you hate them, they're a horrible person. It's very strategic. I don't like that you did this because this hurt our company. This hurt our, the project we're working on. And then you move on, and that's it. So it's, again, using anger in a way that's strategic. And my very last point is about giving back. So the idea that, again, being less of a bee and trying to find that middle ground where you're liked and respected, find a mentor, find somebody who has modeled a profession in a way that you respect and that you admire, and try to get them as a mentor, and then seek to support the people coming up behind you. Because when you're emotionally plugged into other people and you're working in the best interest of everyone, it's hard to be nasty to anybody, right? Like you build this foundation where you're all working towards the same things. And this reminds me, when I was a kid, I remember once I was with my dad and we had stopped to get gas, and it was back when all the gas stations were full service, and the gas station attendant cleaned the window. And my dad, I remember he rolled down the window and he leaned up and he said, "You did a great job with that, thank you so much." And he rolled the window back up, and I said to him, "Well, you were just teasing, right? Because that job doesn't matter, you know? Like, it's not really an important thing about how they clean the window." And my dad scolded me, and he said, "No, it doesn't matter how important you think a job is. Doing it well is something that should be praised and should be supported." And that was a really powerful thing for me, is that it's not about whether a person's at the top rung or the bottom rung. If they're working hard, they deserve to be recognized, they deserve to be supported, and we should all be working to support everyone else's progress. And so for me, some of you in the front may recognize this. This is a post on Facebook from one of my former students. And I give my students these little pilot ducks as quiz prizes when I teach them at the university. And this is, she just got her airline transport pilot license. And so my students who I've taught, they go out and they take pictures of these ducks as they progress through their career. So there's pictures of the ducks like this all over the internet. Well, maybe my Facebook, but not all of the internet. But it's the idea, and every time I see this, it just makes me feel so good. I feel like, of course, it's their work that got them there, but the fact that I played one small piece along the way, I feel like that's worthwhile. I feel like what I do has had an impact in helping somebody else. But the other thing is, it may not be professional, it can also be your children. I think that, this link says your greatest contribution may not be something you do, but someone you raise. And so I think the ultimate mentorship is between parents and their children. And so it may be that maybe you're not changing the world, but who knows, maybe those little people who come up after you, who you're helping shape along the way, maybe that's where their path is going to take them. So in conclusion, just a few quick summary points. I feel like everyone experiences failures in life. That's not a question, that's a definite. We're all going to fail at some point. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how you get yourself back up and move forward. But I feel like family and children are a gift. I think a lot of times in professions, when you're a professional woman, you say put your career first, family second. I don't believe in that at all. I think that to feel fulfilled for myself, I feel like I need to have both and appreciate both, and know when to turn one off and turn the other one on. And then I feel like it's important for us to understand that a lot of very successful women feel they are imposters, that this is a very normal thing. And so if you're doing a job and you feel like, oh, it's not really who I am, I don't really believe I'm doing this, even power posing, I feel like I'm faking. Yeah, well, a lot of people, you feel like you're faking when you're doing something new. It takes experience and time before you feel like you own it. So don't let that turn you off. Stick with it, and it's a whole fake it till you make it. Just keep going. And then a few key things, again, just to reinforce, we're talking about balance between being a doormat and being a bee. Don't put yourself down. Power pose when you need to for big events to feel powerful. Say no strategically so people don't take advantage of you. Use anger, but only limited and in controlled strategic ways that make sense for the goal you're trying to accomplish. And lastly, give back. And I think you're all here today for that purpose. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Kearns. Now, I have known Dr. Kearns since she's a little girl, and there's a couple things that she actually said that she didn't say enough about herself in one particular aspect. She actually talked about all the things that we could do and how not having the confidence in yourself, etc. She does. She sent me her CV when I was actually getting ready to do this event. And because I had known her all her life, she's always been this very, very personable person, which is what we actually got out of her talk today. But her CV is an accomplishment of 12 pages. But what did she talk to us about today? How to have balance in our life. Without a doubt, she is someone who's pulled off balance. That is not on my sheet at all. That came from today. But Without a doubt, everything resonated with all of us in different ways. Without a doubt, my legs have got much stronger over my life getting up those mountains. Never really looked at it that way. Thank you. My cortisol probably isn't the best, so now I definitely have to learn that power pose. But your insight, your knowledge, it has helped all of us. Without a doubt, everyone is going to go out with one tidbit, I know, if not multiple. You have helped us put memories into our memory bank of International Women's Day 2017.